Yeah, rockin' coming, y'all. Getting started. We just getting started. We got Red and Blue about to jump on it in a minute. Rockin' coming. Go ahead and start pinging people in. Yeah, we about to get lit. We about to get it lit. What's going on, Sister Christine? Sister Christine.
What's up, Jehudi? How's everyone doing today? Well,
What's going on? Lot of goddess. What's going on?
Hello, good evening. How's it going?
How's it going, sis? You already know the vibes. Go ahead and ping people in. Red and Blue coming in, and you already know we got Brother KABA tonight. So it's gonna be a phenomenal show. So let's get ready.
Peace, family. Peace to you and yours, brother Red Pill, reporting live and direct. Um, like the brother Dahudi said, yeah, like the good brother said, just make sure y'all ping the room, send the room to the hallway. You know, all of that fly stuff that y'all do. First and foremost, shout out to Blue Pillar. Shout out to Dahudi. Shout out to all of the NeterVerse family in the building. Shout out to Lot of Goddess. Salute to everybody in the audience. Peace, love, and light. And big salutations to our guest, our honorable guest tonight, our good brother KAMENE, aka Booker T. Coleman. All right. We are going to have a very, very powerful show. Of course, as you know, we are embarking upon a new year. And the conversation has elevated to applicable sciences. You know, shout out to my good brother, Brother Rich, aka Father Rich, Black Magic 363. He's had a phenomenal run ever since the beginning of the fiscal year. And the majority of his shows are dealing with information that is pertaining to the elevation and the transformation of the God bodies amongst us, both brothers and sisters and whatnot. Last night I was honored to see a program with one of my favorite authors, Wayne Chandler, talking about the rise of the chi, you know what I mean, chi energy and whatnot. Prior to that, me and the brother Al Kibalon 44, we got on there talking about the Wi-Fi of the avatar, right? Prior to that, they had Uncle Hank. He was on there talking about the African avatars. Then our brother Yosef, is that his name? The mudras and the sigils. Brother Yosef with the sigils and the mudras. I mean, the list. Ra Hayes got on there talking about the Anunnaki, you know. And tonight we are honored and we are proud to present the rise of the SuperSapians, okay? Because that conversation is one that really needs to be had. I'm running across brothers and sisters in my everyday walking in my path that are completely tapped in. Today, just today, you know, I had the privilege of meeting a young god in his 20s who's completely tapped in and is doing monumental things, first and foremost with his mind. You know, people are very judgmental when it comes to, you know, melanated men and what they choose to do to be uh, enterprisers or entrepreneurs and things of that nature. And, you know, salute to everybody who's figured out a way to legally bend the spoon, you know, to legally hack the matrix, to legally take your destiny in your own hands, lawfully, my bad, to lawfully hack the matrix, bend the spoon, you know, and do what it is that you love and be of service, and at the same time be very successful doing that and show and prove, manifest on real time. You feel me? Those are examples that need to be multiplied and quadrupled so these little ones can have something to look at and they can have a reference point. So over here at the NeterVerse, that's really like our modus operandi, you know, to roll out and to present genius in real time, you know, to introduce you to our network, to introduce you to our pantheon of the great minds that we have amongst us, to introduce you to the mastermind, to let you peer into the think tank. Because inside of that tank is going to have people who have the solutions to many of our issues and many of our problems. One of the things that 2021 2020 and now 2022 is teaching me is that these solutions that we were trained to look outside of ourselves are inherently inside of us. Nothing is outside of us. This is all internal. All is mental. Like they say, all is mental. And to be able to tap into the mind, or the depths of the mind, or the dexterity of the mind, or, like as I like to say, interstellar travel. There's this hoopla about Elon Musk going to Mars, and people want to know if they could get a ticket and whatnot. But I'm here to let you know, before you even consider leaving the planet, you should tap into the plane. You know what I mean? You should tap into the real Deep Space Nine, and that would be inside of your mind. The true Wi-Fi, the spiritual Wi-Fi, and tap into your Godhead or your Godhood. So tonight we'll be having conversations pertaining to that, amongst other things, and I'm very excited about it. I look forward to chopping it up with the master teacher. If you have your pens and your pads at hand, I would suggest that if you don't, you go ahead and get that, because even though this show is being recorded, it's nothing like taking notes in real time and being able to apply it either during the show or immediately right after it, so the download or the lesson doesn't dissipate, because we are all victims of distraction. Life, that shit is taking its toll. Life is demanding. you know you might be like, I'm gonna get to it tomorrow morning when I get up. And when you get up, there's something else planned for you to handle. So I encourage the student body to really just, take advantage of this in real time and apply it. But I'm gonna go ahead and yield the mic. I'm gonna land my plane and let my good brother Blue Pillar tap in and do what he gotta do. Hold on.
Yes, indeed. Peace to the family. Peace, love, and light. Welcome to NeterVerse Presents. Tonight's episode is a special episode, uh, and it speaks directly to the use case or the utility of the NeterVerse. And what the NeterVerse is it's a virtual attempt to make better use of, our physical selves. And our ancestors have always predicated our existence on what was known as the hero's journey, right? Or the Osarian tale, as it was known in ancient times. You know, what we've been introduced to by way of Hollywood is the way that they give our narrative is the hero's journey. Every movie is either about the hero's journey, journey for self-reflection, or a love story, right? And in so many ways, the hero's journey is a love story. It's a love story about you getting in love with yourself, getting to know yourself on an intimate level in terms of embracing every aspect of yourself, discovering yourself, on that long road, that road of life. And, all of us have different journeys that we contracted and signed up here to undergo, to learn aspects of ourselves to get us back ultimately to our Godhead. And there's been a raging conversation in the community with people saying, how can you participate in a virtual world that's going to take people out of the natural nature of themselves? And we listened to a lot of the problems and we came up with solutions. Okay. And we said, well, what if we created a realm that allowed people to get to know themselves better, utilizing all of these different virtual components? Because if the man has made machine, and machine is utilizing the mind of man to become a better machine, then why can't man also use machine to become a better man? And what does that look like? Something that helps you with your discipline factor, right? An algorithm that knows you just a little bit better than you might consciously know yourself, especially if you're in denial. So there's ways that we can look at our inevitable encounter with machines, because man cannot do anything about the trajectory that he's on, right? Man and machine will meet. And the question is, will man mount the machine, or will the machine mount man, right? So he has a date and a destiny. They're calling it singularity, when the brain or the mind of the machine will outpace the quantum computer of the brain, of man's brain. But man has the ability to utilize technology coupled with discipline, coupled with focus, and he can actually break through the threshold or the mold of what it is to just be an everyday human. Because even in the word, they tell you, if humans are being, then what are they becoming? That's an open-ended question, right? And the question, it's a question that's amongst us. Can you please put your phone on mute?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. It's a question that we're all being faced with, right? And we could sit back and even look at all of the news narratives of last year when they were introducing mRNA technology, and they were allowing people to make this decision about themselves that they would now um, reverse the transcription of their DNA. They will change their coding, right? So they're giving people the options to become a subsapien. So that means the option exists for you to become a super sapien as well. So I wanted to have a discussion with our brother KABA KAMENE, Professor KABA KAMENE. I saw him put a post up, and he was speaking about a civilization from thousands of years ago amongst us who achieved super sapien status. And for the 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 very benefit and the use of mind and visualization and imagination, right, is that if you can conceive it, then you can achieve it. So even if he's telling us information about who we were thousands and thousands of years ago, technically you are still that, or you still have access to that ancestral memory. So we wanted to allow the master teacher to wake some of that memory in us up, because there are no, there's no end on the possibilities that exist in a time like now, this quantum realm that we exist in. So with no further ado, I want to open up the line and bring the professor in the building. So let me see. Yes, brother Kaba, you with us?
Brother, can you hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear. Yes, I can.
Oh, brother, this the first time I'm doing Clubhouse. Y'all are stretching my imagination now.
Indeed, and that's the point of
And it's
this
good to be
all.
back
Right?
with the ledge, so it's all good.
Absolutely, right. And I wanted to explore that notion right there. What are the possibilities of stretching the imagination? If the mind and the body are tethered, if we stretch the mind, is the body compelled to follow it? Since they say that matter follows mind, or mind follows matter, which one is it?
To me, if you can, like what you said before, I say it another way, but it means the same thing. If you can visualize it, you can actualize it.
Absolutely.
And the vehicle that you use is imagination, to be
Okay.
able to imagine the image and to
So
create and to understand.
can we even start right there? Can we talk about the faculty of imagination? Is it a state of matter? Is it identifiable? What faculty is it? Why is it so powerful, and how does it work?
To me, it appears that it's the greatest gift that was given to us as human beings. It's what makes us the masterpiece of the cosmic universe. There are three special gifts that the human has been given. And when you get into Neter and you look at the images that are given, what you come to realize is that these images that our ancestors used were representations, what I call heraldic emblems, almost like flags that represent. And every animal, every plant, everything that the Creator created was given a responsibility. Vision in the bird, agility in the cat, smell in the dog. Those are specialties. Human beings don't have a specialty. That is why we imagined those creations, and we would put their head on top of a human body, hoping that we would have that type of characteristic. So Heru, the falcon, represents that bird that can look directly in the sun and not flinch. That was power, to look at the Creator and to understand that each and every one of us is the Creator having a human experience. And so Heru represents that concept. When you have an owl, the owl represents that characteristic that can see in the dark and can see 360 degrees because the owl can turn its head around. And so our ancestors said, I'd like that attribute. And so that was a specialty in the animal. But human beings don't have any of those specialties. They hope and pray to refine them within themselves, because we all have them, but not like animals do. But what the human being has that sets him and her apart from all the other Creator's creations is knowledge, reasoning, and language. Knowledge allows you to acquire the greatest story ever told, which is the story of the cosmic universe. It then allows you to reason what you have learned in that knowledge. But then, most importantly, it allows us to come here at the NeterVerse and through language express what we have reasoned that we know. That is imagination. Those three steps: knowledge, reason your knowledge, and then express your knowledge. Think ma'at, speak ma'at, do ma'at. Our ancestors laid this out scientifically. Nobody tried to do anything outside of itself. They used what the Creator had given them through nature, and they nurtured nature, represented it by a neter, and then they actualized what they had visualized. And they created a heaven on earth. As above, so below. It's scientific. Ain't taking nobody to the twilight zone. This is science. And there's one thing that we have no room for in our lives. And it's something that many times we say that we have. And I realize that those that say it are saying it with the very best intentions. But if you study this word, you would not use this word. Dr. Gabriel Ayibo told me in a presentation, as he would tell all of our people, I'm saying to all of you, own your greatness. Humble. I am not humble. Humble is having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. Humble is of low social, administrative, or political rank. To have humility is to have a modest or low view of your importance. You are humble. Black folk ain't humble. Not 1 inch of us is humble. But there is something that is called the imposter syndrome. And I think that it's something that we all, particularly we as African Americans, have to be aware of. The imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon or impostorism, fraud syndrome, or the imposter experience. This syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. developed within the epigenetic tag, which is like in the DNA of black folk over the past 400 years. This society has attempted to beat us down so bad that despite external evidence of our great competence, we experience a phenomenon that continues to make us think, to convince us that we are frauds and do not deserve all that we have achieved. And they incorrectly attribute their success to luck. Let me give you an example and then I'll pause so that I can return the mic to you. I watched the funeral of Whitney Houston, and of the many eulogies that were given about Whitney Houston, the most impactful one for me was the one given by Kevin Costner, where he described when he was in negotiations with Whitney Houston to have her be in the movie Bodyguard. He said the way she expressed herself, she really did not think she could do it. Now, family, for those of you who have seen The Bodyguard, for those of you who have heard our sister sing, I Will Always Love You, and all the other songs that were in there, for those of us who watched her acting, nobody on the planet could have done that better than her. But something inside of her made her think she wasn't good enough. I think Michael Jackson suffered from it. I think Prince suffered from it. I think many African American people who are in this system, many times you are exposed to that no matter how great you are, whatever good comes of you, oh, that's luck. And they have done it so much to us that we actually believe that we are not worthy. Yet, despite our success in everything we have done, we still think we are not worthy of owning our greatness. And that's something I've been looking at and studying in us because, you see, in order to break through and understand what a super sapien is, there's another term for it that Dr. Richard King, the great psychiatrist and melanist, also used another term. He called it Homo perfectus. It is that seventh stage after Homo sapiens sapiens that brought our ancestors to a level of excellence. And that excellence was achieved during the Old Kingdom. We're not even talking about thousands of years later. We're talking about the very establishment of Kush Kemet was built on super sapien knowledge and wisdom. And the reason why they did it was because they tapped into nature and listened to nature, and nature was their master teacher. And that's the key to super sapien, to Homo perfectus. As we go through this process, there are other things that I would like to share with you. But right now, I would like to silence my mic and see where we are in this conversation. And I just also want to thank all of you for inviting me to be a part of this activity. Again, like I told you, fam, you brought me up into the next metaverse because this is the first time I've done a clubhouse, and I am just so happy to be with y'all. And I thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation because I've got a webinar that I produced on Super Sapiens. And I'm going to, as we go through this conversation, I'd like to highlight some of the concepts because African American people, let me tell y'all something. You are Super Sapiens. There's another word that could be used, which is more in education. It's called indigo. You have to understand what an indigo is. And when you look at the color spectrum, indigo is the last color you go into before you go into violet, which returns you to the perfect black. So let me stop here, family. Thank you once again for this opportunity. Let me hear from y'all.
Man,
Indeed, that was a perfect segue. Um, and I'll tell you a little bit about with the ideas for the NeterVerse that puts it in proximity with the definition that you gave for super sapien is that we're able to use virtual engagement to incentivize and reinforce people interacting and interfacing with a natural setting, with nature, going out into nature and utilizing the technology called AR, which is augmented reality. And the people will actually be going and getting, tokens and different things that are staked in these environments so they can be engaged in their environment and experience their environment. The particular test that they'll be going through is going to be dealing with hyper focus of their environment for them to actually tap in. So it's not something that's designed to trap people in a virtual world while they're learning aspects of themselves, but also integrating what they're learning about themselves with the outside world and learning their relationship with that world. So when they come back into the virtual realm, not only are they operating and speaking with authority, but they're also, that experience makes them a little bit more amplified. So, we're looking at the possibility of amplifying sentient light beings on a cellular level by engaging them with a virtual immersive experience that incentivizes them being an immersive nature-based experience as well. And we understand that that activates both aspects of the left and the right hemisphere, or what they will call the conscious and the subconscious, to bring about super consciousness when you're utilizing both yourself, and you're integrated in it, presently present. And there's no other way to be presently present in a natural or nature environment other than engaging it, right? Especially if you're a man that's with a woman, you go into protection mode, right? Which makes you super analytical and left brain. But then you go into intuitive mode because you're feeling your environment out, right? Your audio sentience, like you're able to hear things better. You're really, really tapped in because now you become security, but you also want to experience the experience as well. So these are the environments that we have the ability to be the highest form of ourselves and really start dialoguing and getting instruction from that master teacher, you know, which is mama.
No question. It's there for us all to see, family. And when we talk about owning your own greatness, what I want to do is just take us through a science of it, because that becomes very important as it relates to who we are as a people. You see, this is not about a hope or about a think. Science comes from the word scient, which means to know. So I ask us to consider a theory of greatness, the next transition of humanity, because every one of these transitions happened over thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, and sometimes even millions of years. Because the next human transition of humanity is going to go from Homo sapiens sapiens to Super Sapiens or to Homo perfectus. And this individual that we're talking about is an extraordinary, supernatural human being. I'm not speaking in reference to a Twilight Zone. I'm going to say that again. And I'm not trying to take anybody someplace where you haven't already been. I just want us to open up our eyes and realize that we're there. And all we have to do is to manifest it. Homo perfectus or Super Sapiens is the power of self assured, self fullness, Self-fullness is the heartbeat of the eternal life that existed in the universe before the beginning began, and it will exist after forever ends. Super sapiens possess the potential of light from within the darkness that shines. Now, I go back to our brother, Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, who wrote a book titled Dark Light. And he tells us that the original human being lived in 6 dimensions. The first 3 are the ones that we already know, length, width, and depth. That is what we see. That is how we function. But when you take those 3 and you synthesize them together, when you take your view of what you see in the world and you synthesize them all together, you then travel into the 4th dimension, which is the time-space continuum. And the time-space continuum deals with the fact that once you realize where you are, you automatically realize where you've been and where you got to go. So therefore, you have a sense of deja vu. It's like, wow, I've been through this before. I've been here before. Well, yeah, you have. You wrote the book. It's like somebody that writes a book and then reads the book and then say, wow, I remember that. Wow, I thought that before. Well, yeah, you did because you wrote the book. The time-space continuum, when the human being can get to that level of thought and imagination to be able to image, what it does, it allows you to know all things that has ever existed, that is existing, and will ever exist. You will also know all space. You will go wherever you want to go, wherever you have been, and wherever you want to go. And it will be up to you to be able to determine through your image what you're going to do. And when you get to that point of the time-space continuum, which is the 4th dimension, it then brings you into the 5th. The 5th dimension is the light in the universe that comes out of the black and the resurrection of eternal energy in motion. You become the very essence of what you study, what you revere, and what you respect. In other words, your greatest dreams come true. And all of us have that potential. When you get to that 5th dimension and you're walking in the light, you then leave your footprint in the cosmos. And that's the 6th dimension. And that 6th dimension is called gravity. So that when we're looking at the development, let's look at the 6 forms of human beings so that we might understand what happened. The first form of human being, Australopithecus robustus, that's the first form of what we consider to be the human being on the planet. We derogatorily call them the pygmy. They were born and nurtured in Central and Southern Africa, Twa, Mbuti, Khoi, San. And so the 6 forms of human beings is Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus gracile. But then something happened and gracile started to use tools. So with this, they then moved into another level of thought, which is called the Homo line. Homo habilis, which became the human of ability. The human of ability became the human that stood erect, or Homo erectus. Homo erectus then became Homo sapiens, and then Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens sapiens. And the one thing about every one of these individuals that moved through this process, these men and these women, is that the very best, and fam, let me tell you one other thing. It's not the strong that survive, and it's not the survival of the fittest. The ones that survive, no matter what form it may be, from bacteria to plant to fish to amphibian to human, mammal, the ones that survive are the ones that can adapt to the new way. You have to be able to adapt to the new way. So those that were able to adapt, Australopithecus robustus, those that could adapt, they moved on to become Australopithecus gracile. and those that could not adapt died out. Then Australopithecus gracile went through his and her metamorphosis, and those that could survive became Homo habilis, and those that could not adapt to the new world died out. Homo habilis, the best, became Homo erectus. Homo erectus, the best, became Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens, the best of the Homo sapiens, became Homo sapiens sapiens, and those that could not adapt to the new way died. Now, what I'm about to tell you existed thousands of years ago in Africa, but I want to tell you something that's happening right now. Because those of us who are adapting to new ways, who are understanding the role of nature, who can use our imagination to understand who and what we are, to own our greatness, those Homo sapiens sapiens now are becoming super sapiens. And it becomes important to understand this.
To this day.
Homo perfectus, super sapiens, were created as the ultimate future product of Mer, or the ultimate love, from a Neter called Ptah, the creator of creations. Ptah made all things in the universe, including the earth, and super sapiens were an intelligent design modeled after Atum. And as a gift, Atum selected a chosen one that would become the super sapiens every millennia, every century, every year. We have had super sapiens amongst us always, but they were the ones that could adapt to the new way. Super sapiens are a superior, sensory willed mystic capable of performing miraculous acts of will, not magic. Magic is sleight of hand. Will is when you will something. You want an example of this super sapien? Our ancestors on the plantations. They were super sapiens. All of them didn't make it, but those that made it gave birth to us, and they manifested us through those miraculous acts of will and healing all the challenges that they were facing. Super sapiens have the willful cosmic consciousness that clings to the laws of Ma'at, truth, justice, balance, harmony, order, arrangement, and reciprocity. Willful cosmic consciousness, the imagination of the NeterVerse, clings to these laws like the ivy plant hugs a building. Its purpose is to connect itself to the building, to become a scaffold for the building, and the building becomes the foundations of the scaffold. And that is who we are. We cling to Ma'at like the ivy plant. We cling to Ma'at, protect Ma'at, protect truth and justice and harmony, while Ma'at keeps us on the path, and her husband Tehuti gives us the knowledge to be able to reason and to be able to share this information with the beloved community. I yield the mic to the family.
Ashe. Ashe, KABA.
I say, brother. Peace.
Should I go on?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, definitely. 100%. Definitely.
See, because for me, family,
And
what we have to do is we have to have an interactive. This is the one thing that I like about Clubhouse, because of the nature. And I know that there are differences between webinars and Quibinars and Zoom and Clubhouse. So I'm just learning what Clubhouse is about. I don't know if I'm supposed to just keep talking or if I stop for a moment and questions and we can get a conversation going. So I'll leave it up to you to let me know. You
I have
school
a
me
question.
as to where we go from here.
All good. I have a question, Brother KABA. Um, isn't a lot of this spoken about in the Shabaka Stone as well?
Yes. That's exactly where I get this information from. This is
Yes,
my
sir.
my research on my third book, family, Shabaka Stone, an African theory on the origin and continuing development of the cosmic universe.
Yeah.
See, when we're dealing with cyberspace, that's the Nun. We're there right now. When you put your information in the cloud, that is the physicality of what our ancestors were talking about when they talked about the Nun. And the Nun is the without without depth. It is a forever going, never ending water that we in science call the universe. Our ancestors called it the Nun. And Ptah is the conversion of potential energy into kinetic energy. It is the conversion of energy at rest into energy in motion. And out of this, the Nun, the water, the matter of the cosmic universe, in combination and bringing forward the conversion of that energy, brings
Right.
forward Atum. And Atum is
Yes.
the creative word, it is the intelligence. Let's go back to the word imagination. And Atum calls everything into being. And that becomes for humans
Facts.
knowledge, reasoning, and language.
And it was so the water of noon was stirred up by Apep, correct?
You could say that because Apep. See, there's two different. There are many different forms, and what unfortunately happened as we relate to the Indo-European interpretations of the scripture that we gave them, we see the snake as being evil.
Right.
But the
We did.
reality of it is that there is no good and bad as it relates to the African mind. There is good and what exists when it's not good, but it's not bad because there are times that you need the characteristics of what we would consider that. There are times that you need to have a Scythian force. A set is not a bad thing. Set was destruction. But sometimes you need to destroy in order to build.
Facts.
Sometimes you
Facts.
need to
Facts.
destruct in order to construct.
Or
But
destruct to
Ma'at
survive.
demands a balance that you know when to and when not to.
Understood. 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 So in the great waters of none, and with Apep, does that correlate to anything about being a sapien at all? Does Apep have anything to do with us and our lives,
Well,
or do you just go to Amun, or how would you position that?
from what I see, Apep being a snake, you also have Irt, who is also a serpent. They're both. But what the Indo-European faith system did is that they made the devil evil, and therefore you think of the devil. The same way when you think of Lucifer, you think of the devil. But Lucifer really is the light that comes down and brings life to the earth. And that's why he was called or defined to be the fallen angel. But Lucifer was not bad. Lucifer was quite good. But he was a fallen angel because he had to leave the heavens to come down on earth, which is light and
Mm.
heat energy, which created the living gods on earth, who are us.
So in
APAP represents a separation, just like the waves in the water, just like electromagnetic waves,
understood.
representing the separation. And so the separation, as above, so below, APEP, the concept of APEP, would be the division. And this is why you see APEP being speared because that is the separation of what we might call the crest, which is the top of the hill, from the trough, which is the valley. And all things in life have their ups and downs, have their crests and troughs. But what you try to do is you try to use the principle of ma'at to balance.
Understood, brother. Understood.
It's just a powerful concept.
Yes, definitely. And then so us being the children of these beings, meaning that we can convert back to these beings and become the same divine power that we've been before, or is time linear and only pushes towards the way, I guess God's plan pushes us? How does that work?
I'd like to offer you a thought. And first of all, family, may I tell you, I ask you, please, don't believe a word I say, because I'm not here to make you believe me. I just want to make you think.
Okay.
I want us to think now. And I'd like to offer you a concept when we think of children and when we think of familial ties. And I'd like to look at the Asarian drama. And I'd like to look at the Asarian drama and look at Asar and Heru. Asar being the father and Heru being the son. But the father is the son, and the son is the father. And it also goes for sisters too, because the son really is S-U-N. Indo-Europeans made it S-O-N and masculinized it. But when we think of a son, we're not thinking of a son as opposed to a daughter. When I think of son, I'm thinking of a daughter with the son. It is both male and female.
Okay.
And this was one of the
Mm.
stargates that the human family went through that Indo-Europeans have never been able to deal with. When you think of this male-dominated society, it destroys the very fabric of balance. Because when God is only a man, there ain't no balance there. There's only one side to the story. But when you have Ma'at and you have Tehuti, Ma'at is female, Tehuti is male. When you have Nun and Nunet, male and female, Ha, Hahet, Ka, Kaket, Amen, Amenet, you have balance. You have both male and female, going back to what Dr. Ben used to say. In order to have a god, you must have a goddess. And if you ain't got no goddess, you ain't got nothing. And so the idea of all of the neteru, those essences of nature that come to us in both male and female energies, we are them and they are us. Because of the way life goes, we have to be ascended from, because I don't use the word descendant, I use the word ascendant, because our ancestors brought us forward higher the next time. It's like when you
Okay.
sing, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, you end with a do, but you began with a do. But the do that you ended with, while it's the same do you began with, it's at a higher octave. It's vibrating at a higher frequency. And that's who we are. We are our ancestors vibrating at a higher frequency. But we are them and they are us. When we do libation and we call out the names of our ancestors and those that came before us, we're not calling them from the outside to come in. We are invoking them from within to come out. We are our ancestors. And by the way, thanks to ancestral footprints, when you're trying to figure out how many ancestors you have or who are the ancestors, let me just give you a little math. We all have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, 16 great great grandparents. If I took you back 20 generations, and let's say a generation is 20 years, If I went back 20 times 20, I would get you back to 1622. Now hold on to what we're about to talk about. If you were to count how many, and by the way, this is math. It's called the exponential expansion equation, the triple E. Exponential, or the exponent, 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents. Exponential expansion, because you're going over 20 generations, and it's an equation. Because on the other side of that equal sign, when you're on the left side of the equal sign, on the right side is how many ancestors it took for each and every one of us to come into existence. And if I took
Wow.
you back 400 years to 1622, it would take 1,048,576 human beings came into existence in order to bring each and every one of us into existence. 1,048,576 for me, the same for you. So when you think you're alone, when you're wondering your
Wow.
ancestors, but family, let me stop here and say this. I only took you back 400 years, and you've got 1,048,576 human beings that make up who you are. What happens when I take you back 4 million?
Oh my God.
How many ancestors do you walk with, you exist in the metaverse? How many do you have? And after
That
knowing this, could we ever think we're alone?
close to infinity, almost already.
Well, brother, that is the answer. It is 8 turned sideways, infinity.
Man.
That is exactly what it is. Because there was never a time that your essence didn't exist. See, it took your mommy and daddy to come together to have the Big Bang that brought you into existence. But you have existed before the beginning began. You existed as the early mammal, Hadroconium. You existed as the reptile. You existed as the amphibian. You existed as the fish. You existed as a plant. You existed as bacteria. And before the earth was formed, you lived in the sun. And before the sun was born, you lived in the galaxy. And in the galaxy, you lived in the cluster. And in the cluster, you lived in the supercluster. And in the supercluster, you existed for all time and space. There has never been a time that you didn't exist. This just happens to be your time to own your greatness, for you to leave your footprint
My
in the
God.
cosmic reality and dwell in the 6th dimension, which is gravity.
Wow. We need a bomb for that. God damn it. That was the bomb. It's undeniable, brother.
Science, family.
Like he said, reasoning, right?
Yeah.
Looking at this as a scientist and doing what they say, put it under the microscope. If you were to go on a quantum journey through your blood, through your bloodline, right, in your DNA, and unravel it in the story that it tells, you know, it would show and prove everything that the elder just said, right? All of this is scientifically provable by just one of your cells, a piece of your skin. If you are composed of 1,000,000,000,000 ions, then you roll with 1,000,000,000,000 ancestors and more. And that's what you have access to at all times. Now, practice visualizing that in the mirror every day. Before you go outside, you see a trillion ancestors behind you, ready, willing, and able. You know, we will walk different in the world. You know, especially if you saw yourself as a trillion miles high when you walk,
Fact.
because that's a reality as well. You know, I ask all the time, what are we composed of? What are the main things in our physical matter? What are we composed of the largest percentage of? Anybody?
Water,
Water.
All right.
water.
Is that terrestrial?
No.
Nah,
Water came here.
that's otherworldly. Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Not from here.
Now, that's your internal physical. Now, your outer physical, which is your flesh and your skin, what is that composed of? Anybody?
Stardust.
Okay. And, you know, star is something that is all expansive because they didn't say a star from where.
Facts.
And we know that our body has its own instructions. It operates, it does things that we don't consciously tell it to do or we're not involved in. But then there's this aspect of what they call a mind that has a very strong effect on our physical body and the things that we do that our body has to pay the price for, right? Your body's almost at mercy of your mind for the decisions that your mind makes. But is your mind physical? Is it localized? Can somebody locate it?
No, sir.
No, sir. Not
So
possible.
I
It's being
just
broadcasted. Yes,
was
sir.
I just gave us three main examples that takes us out of the realm of just being a concept of a terrestrial being, right? All of those things that I just identified about you make you an extraterrestrial, but it's no big deal. Don't lose your head over it. You're still part of this planet. You're still on this realm, but you're on all realms simultaneously at all times. Because who's to say where you originated from in that particular star cluster that formulated you? Quantum physics says that based on entanglement, you're here and you're there at the same damn time.
Man.
So
To this day, to this day.
would it would it be hypothetical for me to say that I'm a trillion feet tall? That's actually me being small.
Yep.
Man. Explain that.
If
If
uh,
I'm from the Crab Nebula star cluster and it is 4.4 light years away, right?
Right.
The thing
that part.
the thing that makes time quantifiable is that we can utilize time for measurement. When we apply measurement of time to the fourth dimension, which is time and space, that meet on the cross, that's called the time and space continuum, right? And we get into axes and vertices and everything because there's quadrants of space. So or else mathematically, how are they even saying that they have probes and satellites and all of this other stuff that they have, that they say that they have up there? That is all based on computations, mathematical equations. So I'm saying that if I can measure where that star cluster's from or at, and I'm here on Earth, I'm measuring myself to where that star cluster is. And that's how tall I am, goddamn it.
Too cold. Too cold, family. Where the bomb at, family? God damn it.
So this is the thing that I want us to also understand. If we're seeing the use case for metals and particular elements transform in front of us on a commercial financial level, right? Things like rhodium, things like copper, things like tin, things like cobalt, things like coltan, things like palladium, things like platinum, things like gold, things like silver. People are now hearing these conversations in a new modality, And these metals and these elements are gaining a new use case because people are now seeing value in them. Like, oh, you mean stone? You know, some people are just waking up to this. Like, you mean stones out of the earth carry a value, and the entire financial system is built and predicated upon minerals? Because wait till they find out and see the quote unquote legal documents that the entire financial system of not only this country, but the entire global economy is pinged and predicated on the periodic table of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So they can kick and scream and say whatever they want. I have it in black and white. And we can now turn on our TVs and see that it was always about mineral wealth, and minerals are the true wealths. Look at what it just did to the chip market. Look at what it's doing to the electronical vehicle market, and look how in demand EV vehicles are right now, which means that those minerals are even in higher demand, and you can leverage the value of them, you know what I'm saying, at a whole different level. But if those metals are changing, those metals are evolving, then the metals inside of you are evolving as well, which means you're evolving. And you have access to tap into that potentiality of the evolution that's taking place in our physical beings right now. Because one of the main markers that speed up evolution, like KABA was speaking about, is food. Because the jaw is always the indicator of evolution in the species, because evolution is going to be predicated on food selection. And it's also not so much about survival of the fittest and natural selection as much as it is about sexual selection. And that's why it really ties in to this endeavor that we're undertaking with the NeterVerse, because any endeavor to make the human more intelligent means that you increase the potentiality for them to make pertinent, important sexual mating choices, because that's how you really can qualify bringing forward super sapiens. What does that look like, Blue Pill? An app that'll tell you based on your human design if that goddamn relationship is compatible or not. And then you check it against what you check it against, and you check that against that. Like, you got lawyers watching lawyers so you don't go broke. But we don't treat our relationships scientifically the same way. And we have enough tools at our disposal that we can make sure that those calculations are a little bit more calculated. And that's how you can more so assure bringing about a next generation of super sapiens, because there is a prize population on this planet right now that are the only ones capable of pushing P. And that's the small percentage that does not have contaminated blood with nanobots, right? And all sorts of other DNA replicating machinery inside them. So the
To
value
this
of
day,
blood in
to
this
this day.
is more than a ton of gold. And they don't even know it yet, right? So the super sapien is going to be the preservation of the human race, and what it has to become in order to compete in an age where its competition is now an algorithm and is operating off of artificial intelligence, and you have to activate your almighty intelligence in order to survive and stay alive and propagate the species to its next term, its next iteration. These babies are giving you a clear indication that the cosmos is responding in due form and sending back universal soldiers. I swear these babies is universal soldiers.
Facts.
They don't even laugh the same. They might giggle and smirk, then they get right back to business. They like, just hand me the blicker and get out the way.
Yeah,
So the universe is already responding. You're seeing 2-week-old, 2-month-old babies who are already coming into themselves in terms of their consciousness is coming online. They're picking up phones and they're operating these apps like their parents are not able to. And they're getting younger and younger, right? Being able to do that because use your imagination. Where will that child be in terms of its skill and its proficiency with computers in 15 or 20 years? Just in your mind, envision that. Be like, yo, where would this child be at in his proficiency and skill level with computers in 20 years? So you're watching a baby that from the door, they got to know how to onboard, set a wallet up. You know what I'm saying? Put a motherfucking NFT together. Create some bots and shit. They gonna have to know that by the time they two to keep up, right? It's almost like we're taking time for granted, and we just saw time get reset, and that was very monumental because they told you that one aspect of time is over, but they're also telling you that they're on an atomic clock. So it would be fair to say that, is the world on borrowed time? Because the world is just one incident away, like just one incident.
man. Like you said about the children, my kids, man, like they stay with a cell phone in their hands and they know how to do way more things than I do. Like already, it's crazy.
Right.
5 years, old,
So
6 years old.
they're retrofitted, right? They're prepackaged and retrofitted, right, to compete and engage with robots, machines, and computers. It's
And
already prepackaged. It's already in their shadow, like it's part of their contract. They already seen it, like a zenith.
Crazy.
can I add this? 'Cause when you was talking about time, it made me think about when I reestablished my relationship with the sun. That's when I started to not take time as for granted, and especially when I'm studying cosmophysics and like following this strict process. You feel me? It really puts a lot into perspective, and and then when you using the archetypes, you feel me? That comes with astrology. It really gives way to how I would put it, need nuances like dough. You know what I'm saying? Like you're kneading them together, like you're weaving them together. They're already weaved together, like he explained earlier. And it's just becoming sharper through having a big enough field of reference to be able to like identify this shit on the spot. You know what I'm saying? It's cool. Like it was cool to do this as a hobby, like astrology, for example. But no, fam, you gotta be like a full-time astrologer. My son is 4, also with a tablet in his hand. So not only is he gonna be he's already gonna be equipped to fight robots and that type of shit, but he's gonna be able to measure the stars as well in real time, as long as it's available. You know what I'm saying? And he follows the math, and he won't need an app. So like it's real. These super sapiens is real. I feel like I'm one of them. And that does bring me to a question about prayer, like the ancient Kemetic perspective on prayer. How important is that when it comes to this conversation, to becoming it?
In terms of prayer, it's conversation. And while I realize that our ancestors, Kush Kemet, had developed an entire language of honoring all of the different phenomena that had existed and was existing then. When I decipher exactly what's at the bottom of prayer, you have your organized prayer, of course. But to me, I always ask, what would a parent want a child to say? It, I know as a parent, I'd like acknowledgement, acceptance, and approval. That's what I'd like. And I would like to talk to my children, have my children talk to me that way. In all the ancestors that we talked about, the over 1.48 million, there's a whole bunch that we don't have any idea who they are. But once you evoke or invoke an acceptance that you know that they exist, they exist. And that's just the way prayer is, just a conversation with the divine, which is a conversation with yourself. And if I may just say this about time, having gotten to where I am in my life, there's something that I realize. And what I realize is that of all the things that we have on earth, time is the most precious. Because how you spend your time, you can never redo. There, you can make a lot of money, you can lose it all, you can make more. You can build a beautiful house, it can burn down, but you can build another one. For all things in life that are physical, you can always do it again or get it again. But when it comes to time, there'll never be another March 22nd, 2022. Never. So how you spent yesterday is very important. And if the younger generations could understand the value of time, that's where the proverb comes, youth is wasted on the young. It's an interesting concept, but I understand what they mean. Because when I was young, I did not perceive the world the way I do now. Through the years of experience, I've learned not to sweat the small change. I've learned to be able to direct my time towards things that are far more important when all is said and done. And time is a wonderful thing when you spend it carefully and wisely. But if you want to know our young people, for those that may not know, my background is in education, particularly of our young. I've taught every grade and I've taught every subject. I started teaching in New York as a kindergarten teacher. So I was with the 4 and 5-year-olds because I wanted to get them young. I wanted to be able to instill in them the pride that all these great scholars that had come before me, such as Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben and Dr. Asa Hilliard, and to Dr. Sharshi McIntyre. I could go through the list of libation of names that have had impacts on me personally. And then there are ones that I know by reading their work. What I've come to realize is that it is not, when it comes to our children, it is not an achievement gap. It's an opportunity gap. Because in my experiences, if given the opportunity, African American and African students surpass their European and Asian counterparts. I did not research this. I experienced it over my 40 plus years in education. And so it's something I call OpNX, opportunities for growth, environment for creative thinking, and experiences in personal and social settings. OpNX, opportunities for growth, environment for creative thinking, and experiences in personal and social settings. Now, what might creative thinking be? Well, to me, creative thinking is to approach your teaching, be a parent or a teacher or an adult, gear it towards speaking to a creative inventor's mind. In other words, when I taught mathematics to our children, I didn't just teach them math, I asked them, how can you make what I just did better? And that's a creator, that is a creative inventor's mind. That's how an inventor thinks.
That's amazing.
An
Right.
inventor thinks about how to make it better, not just to know it. How do you
Right.
take it to the next level?
Right. Mm.
And there have been studies done in West Africa, in South Africa, in Uganda. There were researchers that found that the most precocious, brilliant, and advanced infants and children ever observed anywhere that they had done was in Uganda. They said these infants had smiled continuously and rapturously from at the latest their fourth day of life. Their sensor motor learning and general development were phenomenal. Indeed, to them, miraculous. But to me, it's expected. These Ugandan infants were months ahead of American or European children. A superior intellectual development held for the first 4 years of life. And then they're hit with what Dr. Amos Wilson tells us, reality. He tells us that around the age of 3 and 4 is when children realize there's something different going on here. My mommy and daddy are being treated differently than other people. They begin to feel when mommy or daddy holds their hand too tight for fear of something going on. So they pick up the feelings of fear. They may hear things that the adults are talking about, and they begin to realize at 3 and 4 years of age something's wrong. But when you compare the black and white child, black children being drawn up into a sitting position, able to prevent the head from falling backwards. Black children do it in 9 hours. European children do it in 6 weeks. Within the head held firmly, looking at the face of the examiner, looking at the person, looking at them, the adult. In the black child, it took 2 days. In the white child, it took 8 weeks. And I'm not speaking in absolutes. There are areas that might be different, but right now I'm giving you the standard of their study. Supporting himself and herself in a sitting position and watching his reflection or her reflection in the mirror. It took a black child 7 weeks. It took a European child 20 weeks. Holding himself upright or herself upright. For the black child, it took 5 months. For the European child, it took 9 months. Now, I could go on because the study really goes on and says, if you want to know more, just read The Psychological Development of the Black Child by Dr. Amos Wilson. And he has the whole thing set up. And this study has been done. And what we have to realize is that we have to get beyond this and realize that from the moment we were conceived in the blackness of our ectoderm or the melanin composite of our existence. All humans are born in the black. And what we have to realize is that we are supernatural. I'm not talking supernatural. That's a whole nother meaning. That's like magic, trick a hand. We are extraordinary. I'm not saying extraordinary. I'm saying extraordinary by the
Right.
nature of who we are as a people.
Thank you. Nah, and if these babies, right, creative inventors, constantly moving their hands and arms and other, you know what I'm saying, making sounds, creating these geometric fields, being, you know what I'm saying, so free, you know what I mean, to protect that is really what I'm getting from it, from this conversation for me. So thank you.
It's something that we have to realize, family. Own your greatness and understand that the reason why people of melanation are treated the way they are by some people of non-melanation is because of fear. False evidence appearing real. They fear you. I used to teach my children in school all the time.
Facts.
And even when children say, why do they hate us? I used to say, they don't hate you. Hate is the reaction to their fear of you. I call it the Simone Biles effect. When you can do something so masterful, they tell you you can't do it. You say, well, why can't I do it? They say, because we can't do it. And if we let you do it, you'll raise the bar of expectation that we can never meet. And we've done
That's
it
a
in every
fact.
sport. We've done it in every area where they have allowed us to use our imagination. Because it was Albert Einstein that said imagination is better than knowledge. Most of the things that he came to be called the greatest scientist in the world, he said came to him in dreams, day and night.
You
There's a
can't be
whole
the
world.
man unless you believe you the man, KABA. I feel you. You got to believe it in your mind.
That's it. When you can believe it, you can achieve it. When you can visualize it, you can actualize it. In fact, the moment you see it, you've actually done it. Now all you got to do is go and get it. But once you imagine it, you already did it. Now you got to find a way to get it.
Yes, sir. You're already home.
That's it. Every dream you've ever had, everything that you've ever wanted, you already had it. And if you wanted something and you visualized it and you didn't get it, it's because you stopped wanting it. Not because someone else stopped you. And I understand that conversation. And I understand what happens to us when we try to do something. But fam, I've seen too many of us be able to achieve against all odds. I've seen us start below, below, and rise higher than the height. You
Super
see,
Sapien.
nature gives. I follow you.
Now I said Super Sapiens. I really witnessed, Super Sapiens here in Atlanta. Some of the what we would call single mothers. Some of these women down here who seemingly like hold the whole world up on their shoulders. They're entrepreneurs. They're raising children. And they're still like in the community. You feel me? And I just seen, and they would have like a smaller stature, things that people wouldn't even look at, thinking that strength is something that's defined to somebody's physical stature, when it's really, the value of somebody's heart and their ability to believe in themselves. And even though there's lessons to be learned in failure, some people opt not to do that. They say, I'm gonna, you know, I can't allow myself to lose or fail. And you know, that's an ethos that we had in the streets that kept us alive. Like failure mean death. It was somewhat kind of different when we grew up. So I've seen people, tap into that part of themselves that they couldn't even explain if they tried to. They just like, yo, I just made it happen. But it was a big thing, because ultimately what grows out of that is, like you said, life, opportunity, all of the goodness, because as you said, it's good and it's when it's not good, but there's still the possibility to alchemize that into a situation that you can still come out on top.
That's fine. Yeah.
Own your greatness. Recognize your footprints. No matter what has happened in the past, in your life, everything that has happened has brought you to where you are right now at this moment, March 23rd, 2022. Have no regrets. And don't get caught up on things that you can't change. Don't get caught up in things that you have no power to change, because that's a waste of time. Only be concerned about those things that you can change. And those that rise to higher levels know how to adapt. Remember, it's not the strong that survive, it's the people that can adapt to the new way. And this is a new way. The world is opening up now. And we're beginning to realize that, when somebody wants to oppress you, there are three things that they will do to you. They will give you a myth. They will convince you to believe the myth. And then, because of that, you form the habit of believing the myth. And while we know that the myth of white supremacy is an oxymoron because there is nothing superior about white, I wouldn't even use the concept superior, because in science, we're not talking about superiority or inferiority. I don't speak in terms of African and Europeans and Asians as superior or inferior. Science talks about dominant and recessive genes that are born the moment you're born in the blackness of your ectoderm. And so when you think about the fact that they gave us a myth, for a while we believed it, possibly. Some of us knew it wasn't true, but some of us may have. But even now, in 2022, as we look back at what we're experiencing, while it's the last form that's always the hardest to get rid of, because we have formed the habit of believing the myth. And in so doing, we don't see our own greatness and we become humble. And we put other people above us and we put us below them. And even in our greatest moments, we think we're lucky. When people tell us a compliment, we say, oh, that's nothing. No, that's something. And you should own it. And there's three things they'll take from you when they want to oppress you while they're making you believe the myth. I shouldn't say making you believe the myth. It's something that you do on your own. But I think you understand what I mean in terms of the myth and believing the myth. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop tells us in Civilizational Barbarism that they take your history, they take your language, and they take what Dr. Leonard Jeffries calls your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And then they superimpose their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles. And as Dr. Wade Nobles tells us, that we then get into the power dynamics to be able and be willing to, as he says, power is the ability to create someone's reality and have that person accept that as if they thought it up themselves. And so when we say that we don't do business with black people because they don't do good business, or when we say we don't trust our brothers and sisters, or when we fight with our brothers and sisters, that's not our reality. Malcolm X told us, who taught you to hate your hair, your color, your lips, your nose? Who taught you that? You didn't learn that in Africa. When did you start doing that? When did you start feeling that? Well, that was the European imagination that we have accepted as our own. And so when you accept and embrace the myth and someone's history, language, values, interests, and principles, when it comes time for you to do critical thinking, critical analysis, and come to a decision, your decision will never, ever be in your favor, because you're looking at the world through someone else's eyes, through someone else's imagination. through someone else's illusion of you. And while it is an illusion, if you believe it, it becomes a reality. But once you break through and you realize your greatness, and you know that you have no humility, ain't nothing about you humble, and you own your footprints, no one has to tell you to be free. You are free. Free
Black
your
Panthers
African
in the
mind.
building.
That used to be the slogan for First World Alliance. Free your African mind.
Whew.
Baba Kamini,
You
I
gotta
had
let that
a
breathe.
question for you.
Sure, brother.
So I'm someone who's been fascinated by language and symbols and letters and alphabets. I was listening to Rod Hayes recently on Black Magic. He mentioned opening an academy where the Nuwapian Sabian language would be taught. What, in your opinion, do you feel is are some of the language that the most closest to speaking the Medu Neter and reteaching our tongues those sacred sounds?
If I were to look at language, I focus on sounds. Our ancestors focused on sounds. They didn't focus on letters. Letters came from visuals, and visuals came from sounds. Nature was our first teacher. When the air blew past us, we heard nature tell us, shoo, shoo. As the wind passed us, we heard the sound of wind, shoo. So we visualized air. When we heard the flapping of the wings of that mighty bird, we heard, so we called that bird Heru. Nature taught us, and the first language formed was formed by the Twa Mbuti people, the original human family that lived in Central and Southern Africa. And they taught the world language, and from language came the nete, or the visual, the pictograph. And then in that pictograph came the script. And so I want to be very practical with us. I want to begin by saying that all African languages are very important, and that all of them, if possible, could and should be learned. But we got to get practical when someone takes language from us. And what I encourage and what I see is that we must have a classical African language. And I recommend that we make Medu Neter, or Medu Necher, however we pronounce it. That should be our classical African language. But the practical African language, if I go to Brazil, my brothers and sisters speak Portuguese and I speak English. We should speak to each other in Kiswahili. If I go to Puerto Rico and my brothers and sisters speak Spanish and I speak English, we should be able to speak Kiswahili to each other. If I go to Holland and my brothers and sisters speak Dutch and I speak English, we should speak Kiswahili to us. Kiswahili should become the practical universal language of the African diaspora and Africa. There are reasons why. Kiswahili is the #1 spoken language of Africa. Kiswahili is the 7th largest language spoken in the world. We have already adapted Kiswahili as a language in Kwanzaa. We use Kiswahili. But also that Kiswahili has adopted many different words from many different languages. But the base of Kiswahili is the what's called Niger Bantu language family, right at the cornerstone of it. It's right there. So many of the words and thoughts and ideas that emanate out of the spoken word Kiswahili. Ninapenda Africa. I love Africa. These words evoke and invoke in us a sound. And so I see that there are practical reasons why we should take Kiswahili. Kiswahili is being used now in many African countries to be the language of commerce. And so while this is growing, let us do that. And then after we can speak to each other wherever we go, then we can learn other languages. But let's be practical about this. Let's start from a point of departure that already exists. And I'm speaking for the masses of our people. For those of us who are in this conversation right now. Yeah, we're talking, but I'm talking about the brother and sister that ain't on this conversation. I'm talking about that brother or sister that's hanging out on the corner. I'm talking about the brother or sister who is searching for this truth but don't know where to look. And once they're exposed to it, in whatever way, Instagram, a webinar, overhearing somebody talking at a gas station, whatever it is that will turn them on to this. I'm reaching the masses of our people, that those that are ready to go. And family, I realize a whole bunch of us. But just imagine wanting to light a fireplace. And you want a roaring fire. You got 12 big ready logs right there in the fireplace. What you do is you light the first one, the one that's closest to you. And you put it back in the fireplace, and that first one lights the second to the third to the fourth to the fifth, and on to the 12th. And then you have a roaring fireplace, but you only lit one log. You lit the log that was closest to you. We cannot overwhelm ourselves with a task that may not just be ours. Because if we do this right, we got to do this right. No one person, all of us, and all of us have an answer. No one person has the way, no one person has the answer. All of us together have the answer. And sometimes the word will come in what's called Haitian Creole from Haiti. The answer may come in the Spanish spoken in República Dominicana. It may come in the Dutch of Suriname of South America. It may come from the English of Dominica. It may come from a corner of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We don't know. But when we start talking to each other and using a language that is good for us, that brings the sounds to us, many things can happen. And then we can study other languages. Then we can begin to talk to our people around the world in the various languages. But as African people, my recommendation is that Medu Neter should become our classical African language that we refer back. There are people that speak Medu Neter. I'm not necessarily saying speak Medu Neter. I'm speaking recognize the pictographs, because the pictographs are the footprints of nature. And when you know this, I believe the question was asked, what are we primarily made up of? And the answer was water. And yes, it is the H2O. It is the 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. But there's another water. There's a universal water. There is the waters of Nun. And those waters of Nun, I encourage you to Google this word, or these words: plasma physics. Plasma physics. Physics. Solar power is the future wealth of the planet. We in our classrooms and in our colleges are preparing our students to simply be slaves to pay the educational multi-billion-dollar business. We are not preparing our children for the future. The future of our people, the super sapien, is going to find a way to bring forward what's called nuclear fusion. All them bombs being dropped in Europe right now, they're being dropped by nuclear fission. It is separating the nucleus of the uranium atom, number 92, and it's encasing it in metal. And that becomes the bombs that's being dropped. It's like if we had a big tent and we put 1,000 mouse traps in the tent, and we pulled back every mousetrap and we put a ping pong ball. And then somebody comes and throws an object in to hit one of the ping pongs, and you close the net. And pretty soon, one ping pong erupts, the other erupts, the other erupts, and pretty soon, they all erupt. That is the nuclear bomb. But what Africans did is they took the nucleus of the hydrogen atom and fused it with itself, and 2 hydrogen atoms became 1 helium. 3 hydrogen atoms became lithium. 6 atoms became the carbon atom. Now you know why they refer 666 to the devil. Because for superstitious people, you ain't never going to think about 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. The carbon atom, that is the cosmic glue of the universe. There are 4 major atoms or elements on the planet. Let me stop here and talk, because a lot of times we get atom and element confused, because we have the periodic table of elements and then we have atoms. But I encourage you to look at it like this. An atom, well, let me take you to an ice cream store. An atom would be equivalent to the flavor. The element is equivalent to the scoop of that flavor. And when you put many different flavors together, that becomes the molecule. It's so simple to explain, yet confused minds make it so complex. So you have 4 major elements or atoms. You have the nitrogen, the oxygen, the hydrogen, and the carbon. You can put 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen together, you make water. 2 parts hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen, you make hydrogen peroxide. You can do that and only bring together 4 of any atom together. Hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. You can only put 4. But once you introduce 666, carbon, that creates the billions of molecules that exist. So once again, life came out of the blackness, because carbon is a Greek word for charcoal. You know what color charcoal is. That's where carbo comes from, blackness. And of course, I could take you back into Africa, where the Greeks got it from, but I'm going to leave it there for right now. But once we understand this science of what we're talking about, and that's why I have observed their scientists, like the brilliant brother, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I've studied his mentor, Dr. Carl Sagan. And I've looked at Stephen Hawking's work, Dr. Michio Kaku's work. And what I've done is I've made a comparative analysis between the science of today and the science of our ancestors, because I know the science of today came from our ancestors, except the only problem is the science that we're experiencing today is vomit. Dr. Wade Noble says that when the Indo-Europeans sat in front of our ancestors to learn this great knowledge, the meal was too rich for them. Their intellectual enzymes could not digest this brilliant information. So whatever they did digest, they vomited back up because they couldn't handle it. That vomit is Western civilization. And so Dr. Wade Nobles encourages us, don't throw that vomit away. You don't want to do nothing with it, but examine it. Because in that vomit is the original meal. Find out what our ancestors were cooking and then recook that meal. Because you, as African American and African people in general, all the African diaspora and Africans at home, have the intellectual and spiritual enzymes to digest that rich meal. Simple, family, yet it's complex. Because if you still believe the myth, you ain't going to understand what I'm saying. But if I can get you to think, don't believe me, do your own research, and then come back and tell me what you learned. Because the way you look at something is going to be different than the way I looked at it, and you might be able to tell me something that I don't know. Because the more I learn, how much more I have to learn.
Question, Brother KABA. How would you respond to the people that ask or say that Swahili was made from Arabic language and it's really from the Arabs?
Well, I can take it back two ways. The Arabic language was created in the hills of Ethiopia.
Facts.
The Arabic that we speak now has been tainted by Indo-Europeans, but the original African language brought down from Ethiopia into Saudi Arabia, which was a black land. There's chapters on that in African presence in early Asia. And I heard Dr. Wayne Chandler's name spoken before. He got a dynamic essay in there about who the original Arabians were. So my first thing would say is that even if it is an Arab language is black too.
Facts.
But let me say this: the foundations of Kiswahili is Niger Congo or Niger Bantu. The base of it, the foundations of it. Wasn't nobody bringing anything Indo-European from there into Africa and going to school black folk. The closest they could come is to come in and share what they knew with an already formed people. You see, we got to know the difference between episodic history and holistic history. Episodic history is episodes. I'll give you an example. You can't understand Kush if you don't understand Kemet. And you can't understand Kemet if you don't understand Kush. Because who we call Kemites really are Kushites, who brought their civilization north and settled in a place that they called Hikupata, which the Greeks came in and called it Egupatos, to which we today call Egypt. So even when we use the word Egypt, we're still using an African word, but it has been tainted in time. Hikapata, Hikaptah, which means the essence or the spirit of Ptah, the creator of creators. The Greeks came in and called it Egupatos. So Hika became Egu and Ptah became Patos. And then further, Egupatos became E, Gu became G, and Patos became Pt, Egypt. It's us, family. It's not
Wow.
them. It's not them. And if someone can help you believe the myth, because when they allow Egypt to be taken away from Africa, then you allow aliens to come in. You want to talk about aliens? We talk about the people that are in Egypt right now. They are alien to that land. For them to claim that they built the pyramids, I'm speaking about the Indo-Europeans now. For them to claim that they built the pyramids is equivalent to President Clinton and Bush claimed that his ancestors built the majestic mounds of America. They ain't had nothing to do with it. But when someone gives you a myth, when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. Episodic history allows us to think that Indo-European Muslims came into Timbuktu and created the University of Sankore and Gao and all those great institutions in West Africa, but nobody tells you that's episodic, because if you look at it holistically, you would know that those universities existed before Indo-Europeans even existed. But when they give you episodic history, they slide themselves into the story. But when you know the whole story, you know the picture. And family, Indo-Europeans are not that picture. When Africa's picture was taken, the negative was sent from Europe. We have to know this, but we don't know it emotionally. We don't know it because we want to feel good about ourselves. Because there are things that I challenge us in that does not necessarily show us. We have had our sinners and we've had our saints. Africa has had all the different types of folk in it, doing all sorts of things in it. So I'm not trying to glorify and make it something that is not. But the one thing about African society, the one thing about original society is that you know you are based in nature, and that for all answers you seek through your questions on earth will be answered by nature, not by a computer. Because whatever artificial intelligence we have, it was programmed by humans, and humans programmed it by nature. But no matter how phenomenal the artificial intelligence is, it will never surpass natural intelligence.
Mugen, are you
It
trying
is what it is. It is what it is, family.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, when you were speaking on the plasma, this is actually something that I've been diving deep into. Just in regards to the field of study that I do, which is human design. But I wanted to understand, the components down to the molecular level, the alchemy, in which we can feel confident in our bodies. And I just wanted to speak on the plasmatic. This thing's called plasmatic first aid, and coming down to the realization that nanocoated copper with zinc is actually extremely effective for our nervous system and our emotions, because it balances the neural system and it makes you more confident in the emotions in which you are able to feel and embody. Um, the next thing that I had come across was copper peroxide, which is an inorganic compound with the formula CuO2, and it's an oxide of copper 2 with two oxygen atoms as a peroxide unit, and it appears, as a dark olive green. But what that's for is for the lymph system, and that's for your physical, anything due to physicality. So this strengthens your physical system. If you add that with some zinc, that again, no, sorry, if you add that to some calcium, so the physicality with the calcium, which is good for the bones, will strengthen your physical being. And then with the blood system, which is energy flow and energizing, you create components of that with the zinc. And this focuses on the emotion, but nano-coated zinc and nano-coated copper Um, is something that I've been finding extremely helpful, especially in this day and age as we are rediscovering new essences of technology. I don't want to say new, but rediscovering essences of technology. As carbon-based beings, we are experiencing certain things that are affecting us in regards to the radiation and the EMFs that we are, utilizing to enhance our human experience. um, Silicon-based beings, such as robots and AI, would benefit greatly with the EMF, but carbon-based beings, that these type of alchemical substances will aid in the plasma and strengthen you in order to withstand anything in regards to that. So I just wanted to just throw that in there because you were talking about plasma, and I've recently just been going deep into this field of alchemy, and I just wanted to, just share that with people. So uptakes in your calcium, your zinc, nanocoated copper, all of this stuff is extremely helpful to create, the GONS for your plasma. So I just wanted to share that.
My brother, I
And
appreciate you sharing. You schooling me now. I'm here taking notes, brother. Thank you for sharing that.
gratitude.
I see we have another plasma scientist in the building. I want to introduce you to our brother Kibalon. Kibalon, brother KAMENE was speaking on nuclear fission. I was wondering if you could touch on that.
Well, the point I was making was the super sapiens, the extraordinary and the supernatural human that is going to move us into the next level is going to master and understand nuclear fusion, because we're into nuclear fission, which is the separation of the nuclei. And when you do that, you create a great deal of toxic waste. Nuclear fusion, according to the science of today, has very little, if any, toxic waste left behind, and it is a forever present. See, the reason why nobody want to get into solar power now is because they know people can't make money from that. And they're really racking their brains now to figure out how they're going to make some money on solar power, but you can't. And isn't it interesting, family, that in all the places on the planet where where the sun shines the brightest on Earth, the people are the most melanated? It's like the Creator put in our backyards in Africa, the Caribbean, Central South America, put in our backyard the future energy, solar power. We're going to have to get up off this earth. We have to get away from fossil fuels. We're going to have to get away from the gas. Wind and water will be a medium, renewable energy. We have to teach our children the future. That is where the economic wealth is going to come from. And economics don't mean money. Means environment or home. Oikos, Oikos, like ecology. Economics is to know your environment and to be able to use it to your betterment. It doesn't mean money. And in years to come, those super sapiens that embrace solar power and understand how to develop it and bring life and light and sound to the earth for free, there will be no air that will go at the end of their name. You can't call them a millionaire, a billionaire, a trillionaire, a zillionaire. The wealth will be so abundant, there will be no measuring how wealthy you can be. Because when you figure out how to do solar power, you're going to figure out that you, as a melanic being, you are a walking solar panel. You are a solar battery. Remember that, family. Own your greatness.
And yeah, peace, Professor Kaba. This is Al Kibulan. I wanted to
Peace to you, brother Akibulan.
peace, and this is kind of a full circle moment for me because we spoke actually back in 2016. I called you because I had a question on the Shabaka stone in reference to
Okay.
Gabriel Ebo, and we talked for about a good hour and a half. You may not remember, but you had sent me basically a study guide, and it was through email, but we spoke for a while, so this kind of a full circle moment for me, so I'm honored to speak to you again. Um, but you were talking about solar panel, energy, and the family. We gotta, understand too that melanin as well as photovoltaic. Meaning we
Mm.
take, photons and convert it into bioelectricity and filter it through as information, right? So, me and Red had a monumental lecture Saturday called Soulmatic and the Illustrabrina Static, and I was speaking about the science of our ancestors and how they were able to basically tap into what we call today free energy. Um, and I then brought up Ptah as well, but I was speaking more specifically about the dielectric field, dielectricity, which in essence will be considered the primordial waters of noon, or what today they call counter space. But it's the empty space that exists all the information within the universe. And this is the type of energy that we have to begin to bear witness to, because the fact, again, that we are the highest form of technology in this world and will be the highest form of technology, we interact with our environment at will. So, with us existing in a space that's a fluid like dynamic, the body itself, more specifically, again, melanin performs what you call cutaneous gas exchange, which is skin breathing. So the exchange rate between the skin in reference to an exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, we do through the skin, as opposed to through the nose and the mouth. And if you go back to the Ogdo or the creation story in ancient Kemet, you'll notice that you'll have four snake heads and four frog heads in reference to what Professor Kaba was talking about with the Nunet head he had Amunet. Um, you notice that four of them have four frog heads, and what they were speaking about was, in essence, if you look up cutaneous gas exchange on Google, the first image that you will see is frogs. So, our ancestors were talking about that we are always in an exchange back and forth, kind of symbiotic relationship with counter space, which again would be in essence the primordial waters. So these beings, they came out of the primordial waters or made up the primordial waters. And what the ancestors were speaking about is the fact that we have this, again, availability to energy that a lot of people don't have. So once we can begin to understand that and then actually duplicate technology outside of us that references back to the black body, then we're in it's game over. So I just wanted to add that piece, and also in reference to plasma as well, because again, our ancestors always talked about ionizing the plasma in the body, whether it's sun gazing, whether it's putting your bare feet in the grass, which they understood that the earth was a capacitor. Whether it was sunbathing, being outside, stimulating the electromagnetic body, because they understood once the plasma was ionized, when the physical body dropped, the plasma was so intelligent that it had the capacity to reach enough escape velocity to successfully disengage from the physical body and return back as a star. You see? So, again, understanding that the body itself, the melanated body, is the highest form of technology that will ever exist and has ever existed. So, I just wanted to add that piece and, again, reference the fact that, you know, we have to adhere to, again, the environment that we exist in, because we have a different relationship, to nature that nobody else does. So that's my piece.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, brother Akibulan. Please let me take you back to when you said counter space and you said cutaneous gas exchange. Did you use another word for cutaneous gas exchange?
No, skin breathing.
Okay, skin breathing I saw. Just so I can get this in place, because hey brother, this is some heavy stuff that you schooling me on right here. Cutaneous gas exchange and skin breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it, that's called counter space.
So
What
counter
is
space.
counter space?
Counter space basically is what they deem today as empty space. So the space between the phone and my face is counter space. The space in between me and the walls is counter space. Everything that's deemed not physical in the environment that we're currently in right now is considered counter space, or again what they
I
deem,
got you.
space. But in Kemet they referred that as to shu, the environment, what we can't see. Because what we can't see is based on light that is constructively embedding within one another in harmony. Reason why we can't see it, which is constructive wave interference. Deconstructive wave interference comes by way of disharmony, by way of light that is not coalescing together and is actually rejecting, a frequency out of it, which we deem as color. So the colors are based on the fact that, we see color based on that specific frequency being ejected out of harmony per se, because again, invisibility is based on light that can coalesce in harmony together, which is called neg entropy. So that's basically counter space. Counter space is everything that we can't see, but consists of all the light that we, deem information. So when I'm talking about cutaneous gas exchange, I'm talking about the basis of the fact that our ancestors were familiar with that our skin breathes. And they understand when you place a black body in a hotter environment, that exchange rate increases. So it's the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, but they seen it as a form of electricity. So by putting the black body in a hotter environment, that exchange rate of information through the body is a lot more quicker. Thus, the DNA that responds to our environment has a capacity to implode what you call scalar energy, or today what they call free energy. So they understood this level of technology by way of the body because the DNA follows a specific ratio, which is the golden spiral that we call today, which is the 1.618. And that is the only number that can harmonically take electromagnetic waves and coalesce them together in harmony, thus generating scalar energy. So, yeah, so basically to answer your question, counter space is empty space.
Brilliant, brother. Magnificent. Thanks for sharing, brother.
To this day, to this day.
Right. So yeah, just to refer back to it again, the DNA is a supercomputer. It's again based on the fact that it's in reference to a dodecahedron, more specifically, and Platonic shapes based on them following that phi ratio has the capacity through wave mechanics to take electromagnetic waves and constructively, literally braid them in harmony to a point, what we would consider a vortex or things of that nature. But yeah, so referring back to the ancestors, they were familiar with this. So again, Professor Kaba, to answer your question, yes, the fact that counter space has, as we all know, an available amount of energy, but also an available amount of information that we can interact with at will based on putting the body also in a hotter environment, which means, again, that exchange rate through the body via information is a lot quicker and a lot more proficient.
Mm, phenomenal. Phenomenal, brother. This is where we are. Own that greatness, brother.
Yeah, but that's my piece right there. So
It's a black piece, brother. It's powerful. It's really
Indeed.
powerful. We're getting there little by little, step by step as we move through this process. All the scholars that have come before us, they did the very best with what they had. Dr. Diop didn't have a Dr. Diop. So many have moved through the process and created paths. And every generation takes it to the next level. And it is the obligation of the elder generation to ensure that the younger generation does better than them, not like them, better than them. And when I study African civilizations, that is the whole concept. That's the psychological concept of the dynasty, which was families. That everything that you saw coming out of the old kingdom in particular, but all the other kingdoms also, you saw that they built intergenerationally. They handed down the legacy to those that were coming after them. This is who we are. But the one thing we have to understand, that solar power, with everything that it entails, is the future wealth of the planet. And the super sapien is the one that's going to be able to harness the power of nuclear fusion. And that is what we ought to be teaching our children in our schools, in our after day schools, in our church groups, wherever we are, wherever we can do this, however we can do this. We need to prepare our children. And for those that might want an idea, Kindle has a free book. It's called Solar Power Demystified. You can go on Kindle and get it free. You can go to Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, and you can get book. You can get a book by African Creation Energy. Last time I checked, brother had 5 books out. He talks about science and math, and he talks about technology. Just as brother Akibulan is speaking, this is science now. We're beyond the emotion. And it's not to say that emotion is bad. There's a good emotion and there's an emotion that's not good. Anger is emotion out of control. Passion is emotion in control. Passion is a good thing. And that's how you can drive your energy where you don't deplete your power. But anger will deplete your power and you can never be productive when you're angry. You may have a right to be angry, but you're not going to produce then. You produce through passion. Passion for what you do. I hear in so many of the voices that have spoken here today, and I think you can hear it in mine. This is passion. This is mer. This is the deepest form of love we have for our cosmic universe and respect for nature. And that's why we were able to do what we did. Because in us loving nature, nature loved us. Because when we loved nature, we loved ourselves. And when we loved ourselves, we did for ourselves. It's a simple process. And we have to think about this now and move ahead. And move ahead for our children. And we have to move ahead for our children that we will never know. Remember those ancestors that we spoke about 400 years ago? That we don't know their name, but we know we are here because of them. We are because they were. Since they were, therefore we are. What will our children say of us 400 years from now? What will they say in 2422 about us and what we did? And that's what we have to look at doing now. Not just to develop for our children today or our grandchildren, not the children that we will know, that we will live long enough to see. What will those that have never seen us, understood us, never sat with us and talked to us, what will they say of us? What will they say we did? What will they say we didn't do? What will they say we should have done? And that is what we need to do. What they will say we should have done. Let's do it, family, for those yet to be born.
I have a question I
Baba
want to
Kamini, would
ask.
you say that the Kemetic word Mary is more dealing with exuberance?
The
Because I
word
know
that
that word passion, brother Red Pill broke down it from the Latin. That's kind of off base.
what is off base?
So passion. I know Red Pill had talked about that, and I heard you say Mary though. You said um, like Ta
Mer,
Mary, right?
M-E-R.
Would that be like the netter? Oh, mer. So that would be like exuberance or
Well,
focused will. And
yes, it could be all that, but
can you break down that word?
the way in which the word has been introduced to me, we have a word in English that nowhere nears get to that. But we have a word called agape. which is the supreme love of the beloved community. When you hear Dr. King talk, he's talking about that beloved community, the love that you have that builds. And so I look at the word mer, and again, family, there's so much more work that we have to do. There's so much that we have to do. And there's so much that we have yet to get accurate. The concept that I'm looking at is that supreme love, that kind of love that we say to people, I love you so much, words could never explain. When those feelings become so powerful that there are no words that could actually explain what you feel, our ancestors knew that there are certain feelings we have that can't be explained, that they go into the supernatural, extraordinary realm, that there are no words that could express what we feel for our brother El Haj Malik El Shabazz. There are no real words for what that brother did for us. And Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, those of us who are in our families that have done so much for us. There are no words that can explain. And our ancestors understood that just because you're adding more words like very, 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 very much doesn't mean that there's an actual expression for that. Because you can always add another very. This is the type of love that you cannot add another word. In fact, you can't even have a word for it. And so I see mer as that word. Now, as we move through the process and we get more accurate, situations will alter cases. But my interpretation of that mer is that unconditional love. That love that it don't make a difference what you do. I will always be with you. Even if you do things that are not correct. See, we have a thing about canceling people now. We have a thing about when somebody does something or says something, we just cut them loose. The greatest friend is that person who stays with you during your lowest moments. Anybody can be your friend when it's all good, but only a very special person can be with you when even they don't agree with you, but they love you unconditionally and they will stand with you. They may not agree with what you said or what you did. They may be absolutely opposed to it, but they'll still stand with you and attempt to make even the worst situation better. Mer, that's mer. Mer is the love that a husband and wife have for each other. You see, we use that word love. Oh, I love him. I married her because I love her. No, you didn't. You married her because you was infatuated. That's infatuation. Infatuation is when you got butterflies in your stomach waiting for her to call, and when he's going to call you, you know he's going to call you at a certain time, and the time comes right on the dot, and you keep picking up the phone to make sure the dial tone is there. That's infatuation. That's not love. Love is when you want to walk away, but you don't, because there's something larger than your own personal desire at stake. That's love. Not many people practice love. That's why they created divorce. For all the people that thought they were in love, but were really infatuated. And they were not ready
So,
to love that person.
so you would say
That's
man
mer to
would be
me.
like a love supreme, right? Like what John Coltrane was
Yeah,
talking about. A
yes,
love supreme would be mer. Respect to that. Appreciate that.
yes. That's exactly what it would be. Love supreme. That love, and even that word cannot really explain it. But that's the highest you can go with what you want to say. You can create the visual of that love by using a, a big word or an exaggerated word. But what you're really trying to say can't be said. It's something that you feel. And this is what our ancestors felt for themselves and for us. I'll give you another example of that love, and I often quote this. Remember in the movie Birth of a Nation, the second one, when the brother put it together, Nathan. And there's a scene in the movie where an African woman is brought up to the house to pleasure a European man. And her husband, her boyfriend, significant other, whatever we would like to call this brother, is under the window of where this man is conducting this despicable act on this African woman. And she comes out of the building, she comes out of the house, and the look on her face as she looks at this man, this brother whom she loves, and the look on his face to her, for her to be able to embrace him, and for him to be able to embrace her no matter what happened in that room, that is myrrh. The love we had for each other on the plantation is a love we need to revisit in our communities today. It was an unconditional love. It was a love that said, they may not let me marry you, but I'm going to jump the broom. They may not let me be your father, but I'll still guide you when I can. That's mer. We've experienced mer. We are still experiencing mer. So the word may get more accurate, but the feeling will always remain the same. Dr. King tells us that anyone can do the right thing when it's the right time. But your character is built during times of conflict and controversy, not during times of comfort and convenience. So sometimes when unfortunate things happen to us and we curse the wind that brought it our way, we really should thank the wind for bringing that to us, because nature has given us another opportunity to perfect our character. And that's what life is about. It's about the ascension of cosmic consciousness. It is the development of the super sapien. That's what we have to be about. We were super sapien then. We're a super sapien now. We'll be a super sapien in the future. My question to us as a people is, do we realize it? And after we realize it, what you going to do about
And just to go off of just to go off of what Professor Khan is speaking about, nuclear fusion also can be very simple. Nuclear fusion is a process of love. So when you see two parents embrace each other,
it?
and then the children begin to run toward that and begin to hover and hug on the legs of the parents, that's a form of nuclear fusion. That's a testament to love, because the children are actually feeling the gravitational effect of the two hearts coming into coherence. So if
Mm,
you want to see a family unit and evidence of love in that dynamic, watch two parents embrace each other and the kids just jump, whatever they're doing. They could be watching cartoons, they could be eating, but they'll immediately run over to the parents and begin to like want to embrace as well. And what they're feeling is a dielectric acceleration by way of by way of both of their hearts coming in coherence. That's a form of
mm,
nuclear fusion. That's a form of fusing, which is love. That's a form of constructive wave embeddance. So, speaking on again what Professor Cobb is talking about, as far as being the superhumans that we naturally are, we have to start following the tenets of what our ancestors laid out, even by way of the glyphs. So, the fact that our ancestors always walked around with an open heart, they understood that they had the capacity to extrapolate charge from gravity by way of the heart. And that is a form of nuclear fusion. That is love. So the reason why, when we're doing something that we love to do, time seems to move a lot faster, because they say, time flies when you're having fun. But that's by way of literally allowing the heart to extrapolate charge from gravity, which is causing literally a wrinkle in time. And
Mm,
today, that's what's taking place with nuclear fusion. And that is, in essence, from a more diabolical perspective, why they're using the fusion machines is to manipulate time, because they understand nuclear fusion machines perform what you call in mathematics torsion tensor. So literally, it wrinkles time by way of them lining the specific nuclear fusion machines up under certain local celestial geometries by way of proximity of two planets being in the same vicinity. They're able to construct the capacity to basically be able to pull time into the machine itself, so it speeds time up. So again, they're getting these concepts from understanding the body back in Kemet. And again, following the tenets of our ancestors, if you even look at Ptah is holding a Wajet and he's holding a jet pillar. And what he's telling you is that, again, we have the capacity to extrapolate charge from counter space, extrapolate charge from gravity by way of the heart. So in the Memphite theology, they speak about Ptah being a representative of the speaking or the invoking by way of the heart, because they understood that, again, you're creating a greater disturbance within these waters that we exist in by way of invoking something through speech. But you have to do it by the heart to create the greatest disturbance, so your return rate can be just as fast in whatever you're trying to invoke. That is a form of nuclear fusion. So nuclear fusion today is literally based on the black body by way of them studying Kemet. And going back to, again, we have to first of all begin to follow the tenets from a scientific perspective on what our ancestors were speaking about, but also to understand that today the science that is coming out by way of nuclear fusion is based on the original family. And again, you can prove the concept of love just by watching two parents embrace each other, because again, what's taking place is a heart and heart coherence by way of their hearts extrapolating charge from gravity, which is the vortex that the children actually feel, reason why they want to come over and caress on the parents' legs or run around them, etc., and embrace it, because they're feeling the love taking place right there in that moment. So I just want to add that piece.
phenomenal, brother. Thanks for sharing. Phenomenal analogy and metaphor, brother, and also a reality. Because you're right. Because I know and remember seeing children, even our own children, coming. When my wife and I would embrace and hug, and align our hearts left to left, and our children would come around and do that. And so I recognize what you said by the nature of how you expressed it, brother. And that's science. And that's evidence. It's powerful, brother. Thank you for sharing, man.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, Alke Bulan, what is your awareness on gray matter and the pineal gland in regards to hydrogen? Um, in regards to hydrogen.
Uh, Yeah, so well to answer that, I know, the brain sits in a pool of plasma that's electrically conductive. And the fact that the brain, or rather the pineal gland, is almost the converter, it's the middleman. And also too, the pineal gland is piezoelectric, which means when you apply pressure to it, it generates a charge based on it being a crystal. So it's the medium between hydrogen. Because what takes place is when you change your perception on something, your brain begins to develop a new neural network. So this is why it's important to understand what you're looking at. This is why Europeans had to step in and change the reality by way of words. Because when we go outside and we see the sun as a sun, we're not experiencing the highest quality of information, not only coming from the sun, but we don't know what we're looking at. So we see it then just as a big ball of plasma that delivers heat and sets in the night and then rises in the day, and that's it. But the sun itself is a converter. It's a hyperdimensional gateway. It's a portal that delivers information to the original people on this planet, to filter through as information via it processing information from higher star systems. So then if you go outside with that little piece of perspective on what the sun is, what the pineal gland does is take that information based on now the brain converting a new neural network with the change of perception and converts that electrical charge or hydrogen per se into what you call an endocrine output. So the pineal gland literally takes something that is invisible or something that is not physical and converts it into something physical. You see, and this is why the pineal gland as well has to go through a level of compression and stress, because that compression and stress is what delivers the charge to the pineal gland to activate itself to do just that, be the converter of the information by way of the new neural network that's processed in the gray matter and then transduced through the body by way of being produced as an endocrine output, which is a hormone. You see, so again, speaking about nuclear fusion, that is a form of fusion. But that just simple analogy is uh, the magic that we naturally have by way of changing the perception of what we deem reality. And that's why it's important too to go back and understand how our ancestors would see reality, because their perspective was a lot more broader as opposed to how we are conditioned to perceive reality, because we are getting our information from a people whose pineal gland is calcified. So they're not even absorbing the full spectrum of light or information. So then when we begin to see our reality from their perspective, then we don't know what we're looking at. Thus, the physiological change doesn't take place. Thus, we don't begin to appreciate certain things that are right in front of us. Thus, we don't have the level of enthusiasm, right, to be possessed by a certain energy. So that way we do walk in our Godship in real time. But it's all reference to perception. Our ancestors understood that there's only one sense, and that's perception, but it's filtered through the body in 5 different mediums. But the one sense is perception. And the eye of Heru with the fractions, with the 1/2, 1/4, 1/6, 1/8, 132, 164 is in reference to what I'm speaking about. But that, to answer your question, is the concept of the pineal gland in reference to hydrogen is that it literally has the capacity to take something invisible or non-physical and convert it into something physical by way of a process of information.
Copy that. And so once the pineal gland is able to take that information and perception, it would send some signals down to the other crystals within one's body, right? The electromagnetic waves. And given the fact that you just said that the heart motor, the heart electromagnetic motor, is a fusion combustor. One's perception or one's reality or one's will in regards to the heart electromagnetic motor would be influenced via the pineal gland, or would it be the opposite? Would it be in the other way around? If that question makes sense.
No, that's yeah, because the relationship between the heart and the pineal gland is through a process called bifurengence, which means literally the pineal gland takes light and splits it into 2 spectrums, which is the binary code zeros and ones, and that's how your body filters the information. But with that relative information that the pineal gland has converted into an endocrine output, which is a hormone, the red blood cells traveling through the body faster than the speed of light is now taking that information, and because they're magnetic, they're storing it. And now the red blood cells are translating that information into the heart and storing it there as a memory. You see, which again is
Okay, so it would be stored in the heart, not in the mind. So the mind is just a measuring mechanism, and the whatever happens in the reality is stored in the different crystals within our being.
right, because the mind is the magnetic field. The heart is what generates the magnetic field via the mitochondria in the heart. So this is why you notice when you begin to work out and you're in the gym and you've been in there for an hour and you just feel really pumped, you've developed a larger capacity. You develop more mitochondria in the heart. Reason why being when you are done with the workout, you notice that you start having clear thoughts, more creativity, ideas are coming. It's because now you generated a larger magnetic field, because the heart is what generates the magnetic field, which is the mind.
Okay, copy that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Well, this definitely was a a collegiate level clubhouse gathering this evening. So much information was shared. To the professor, we want to give you a definite salute for everything that you shared with us this evening. It was so enlightening. You painted so many pictures and made so many things crystal clear. We definitely want to extend to you an invite, right here on this platform to say we need a KABA KAMENE module teaching series in the NeterVerse so we can have access to all of the curriculum that you have taught from all of the grades that you said that you have interacted and interfaced with. So definitely want to have that conversation. Brother Red, is there anything you want to leave us with?
I just basically want to say that, we spoke about earlier in the show. I told the fam, make sure you have your pen and your pad ready because this one right here is just going to be a lot of information, a lot of note taking. This is a classic. I'm very grateful. Gratitude would be the word that I would use as I
Yes.
walk away. This is a full plate. So many questions were answered. I'm just charged up. I see the picture clearly, and Professor Kaba, he laid it out, and all of the participants tonight. It was a full house, and I'm just grateful.
Indeed. Let us all make sure that we give Brother Kaba a follow. He's new to Clubhouse. We want to welcome him with open arms. Make sure that you follow the Above House, the NeterVerse as well. We do this every Wednesday. This is, I believe, our fourth episode. Shout out to the Now Meta family. Shout out to the NeterVerse Discord family. You can also follow us on Discord family. All right. And we'll keep you updated over there with all of the developments. We have some pretty large announcements coming very soon. Okay. So again, yes, Brother Cobbler, if you have any social media that you want to share with them,
Yes, my family, I'd like to share because as you spoke about putting together a program for the metaverse, we
yes.
can begin because I do webinars every Tuesday, which are quick webinars, which is educational methodologies, where
Okay.
I Africanize curricula. And I
Excellent.
do that every Tuesday. And every first Sunday of the month and every third Friday of the month, I do a webinar on various subjects. Right now, I'm doing something on Shabaka Stone, where we're analyzing the chapters of the book. And on the third Friday, I started this past Friday on the origin and development of the Caucasoid, of the Eurasian, so we can understand what's happening in the present right now.
Right.
So let me extend my website, www.kabakamene.com, KABAKAMENE.com. I have my free e-course and study guide is up there, and also all of my materials. And you can go to my Instagram page at Kaba Kamene, KABAKAMENE. That is where I have I use it like my community bulletin board. I call it the meeting at the African Square. This is where you can go into my link and you can look at the materials that I have. You can register for the webinars and webinars in terms of my Instagram, and I also send messages through my website. And then I have three books:
And,
um, the,
right.
the the life of William Leo Hansberry, who was the original architect of the African Studies program back in 1922. Spirituality Before Religions is my second book, and Shabaka Stone is my third. It's on Amazon. So
Yes.
you'll be able to download them there. It was the best way for me to be able to get this information to you as quickly as I could. My family, I thank the metaverse for this opportunity. I look forward to the future. Keep on keeping
Yes.
on. It ain't over till we win. And just remember, family, solar power is the future wealth of our planet. Hotep fam.
Hotep, my brother. Indeed. And on that note, family,
That was profound.
yes, peace, love, and light. Until the next episode, peace.
Peace.